right. All right. So, welcome to this episode of Talk Ish. I am Heidi, and
I'm Justin.
yes, and today we are going to be talking about the the elephant that's been in the room for in black spaces for quite some time. What are biracial? Who should we identify as? Are we black? Are we white? Or are we mixed? Are we supposed to identify and form and gather our own race? Oh, we're going to talk about that today. Now, in light of the situation, which everybody's talking about with Jocelyn Hernandez and Amber Rose, and now all of a sudden, mixed and biracial people are starting to be pushed back on the forefront. And I must say that it's been a pretty emotional thing for me. And I have and we're going to get your thoughts on it, but I'll be honest with you, I'm very disappointed and sad in a lot of what I've seen online and the comments that I've seen online from people in the black community. And that shit it's sick for real, because like if you took certain words out of what people are saying, I would not be able to tell whether it was a white person or a black person saying those things. So
Like what?
like as far as like you're this, or invalidating a mixed person's experience, and saying that pretty much whatever their experience isn't valid, it isn't real because they're not fully black. I've seen that so many times. And it's just so crazy because black people have been trying to fight for their voice to be heard, and they know exactly how it feels to be invalidated, but they tend to do that to the mixed community. And they force people to they try to tell you, you must identify as this. Fuck you. I don't got to do anything fuck you tell me to do. So let's talk about that.
Well, I know less about the Amber Rose Jocelyn thing. I did hear a little bit about that. I'll tell you what it was for me. Was when Barack Obama was elected president. And
my president is black.
I was like, hold up. He's biracial, but now he's black. So it feels like biracial people are black when it benefits black people, right? When it shines a good light on us, right? But whenever, if it doesn't necessarily shine a good light, then that person's not black anymore. They're mixed. They're white, or what have you, And the reason why black people are kind of being focused on this one, because white people don't see the distinction.
No, they think we're black. They don't care.
They don't see the distinction. You're a light-skinned nigger and you're black and you're a dark nigger.
Yeah.
That's all we are to them. And so that's how we're seen. Heidi and I found out prior to recording this podcast today that our dad started. He got wind of the podcast.
Oh, for people that don't know, our dad is white.
Our father's white, and our father said that we should change our last names
because technically the Russians, because my father's people are from Russia, the Russians were white Russians. They were white Russians. So I think once he heard that we had this podcast, he wants to distance the name from us.
I got one word to say to that. Nope.
Absolutely not. Nope. Now I'm married. My married last name is something else. It's Whiting. Shut up.
Heidi Whiting.
Some people say sometimes I'll be like Heidi Whitting, so it doesn't do the Heidi Whiting thing. But I hyphenate it sometimes just to have that gap and be so it's not Heidi Whiting. So Heidi Talkish Whiting. And hell no, I ain't letting that shit go. And I can't, and I'm so glad that this podcast is what is going to be represented of the Talkish name, because other than that, the Talkish name was not was unknown really. I mean, in general, you know. So now the face of the Talkish name is a black face. And I did not say mixed face, I said a black face. And that to me is poetic justice.
I will say, just on a personal note, like I'm a licensed therapist in Seattle, Washington. And in my work as a therapist, I do a lot of addressing shame. I really believe shame is at the root of so many mental health issues. And so that's all I do, preach every day, accept yourself, you know. And where there's acceptance, it can't occupy the same space. Shame can't occupy the same space as if there's acceptance, right? And I will say, this is the one area of my life that I still have very significant shame. And so as we are going through this this conversation, you know, I'm working out my thoughts and feelings about this.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too. Because this is something I've never really spoke on. I push it down a lot. So yeah, so this is going to be something that is, most of it is just coming from our heart. We're only, you know, we're going to be asking questions, and most of this stuff is going to be coming out for the very first time. I agree.
Yeah. And, you know, for a huge part of my life, I denied being biracial.
Me too.
I would call myself Puerto Rican. People thought I was Samoan. I said, let's go with that. But I didn't want to be seen as biracial. And so, but if I'm going to be fully accepting of myself, I have to be fully accepting of my biracialness, and just kind of understanding what that means to me. So this is a buzzword, and it's a word that it triggers me. It makes me very angry. And so let me ask you about this term, tragic mulatto, and how it kind of impacts how you see how biracial people see themselves. You want to start?
Okay. So I got introduced to that word. Well, people would call me mulatto a lot growing up, and I never really understood it. And I know that it derives from, you know, obviously mutt and mule, actually. And they thought that, you know, mules are infertile, you know, because they're a crossbreed, and and so that's kind of where that phrase was coined. And then when they found out that actually biracial people could have kids, you know, then it was like, I don't know, the phrase was coined. But the tragic mulatto was actually written in a newspaper article. It was an essay. I'm not quite sure, but I remember reading back on it, and it was talking about like post-slavery, where, you know, everybody was freed, and so, but there was no space in any community for the mulatto, especially the ones who were, me and you probably would have had a place because we're darker in hue, but those quadroons and those octoroons, the people who were 1/4 and 1/8, especially since the 1/8, they had extremely high suicide rates. And so I was actually planning on writing a book called The Not So Tragic Mulatto, to kind of turn that on its head, and, you know, and kind of, you know, talk about our strengths and our, you know, versatility and all types of stuff. But whenever I hear that word, it does not necessarily, tragic mulatto does not necessarily invoke a negative reaction out of me. I just think that the people who say it are ignorant. And most people are, though. Most people really don't even go out of their way to know or understand biracial people and the absolute 100% nuance that you have to be a mix. Like every mixed person has a different story. And for me, my I don't know what it would feel like to be raised in a white household, like by a white mother. That shit is scary as fuck to me if I think about it. We were raised by a Black mother. I feel very, very privileged to be raised by a Black mother in a Black household, all only in contact with our Black family, in Black churches, in Black spaces. And so it pisses me what pisses me off is when I try to tell somebody I'm a Black woman, and what's so funny is everybody assumes I'm Black. Everybody assumes I'm Black until they see my mom. They see mom and they see how dark skinned she is, and then they'll be like, hold up, what you mixed with? I get it. I've had that my whole life. But if I don't say nothing, don't nobody say nothing. But as soon as I do, that's when the jokes come in. That's when, like, oh, you white, or you do something. I put mayonnaise on my sandwich. Oh, you doing that because you white, or and I just be like, but just like 10 days ago, I was Black to you. But now that you got that fact, you want to separate me. You're already trying to separate me from the community. That shit pisses me off. And it invokes, it's like, if I really dig into that anger, it makes me, I feel betrayed. I feel sad. I feel sad because the community that all I've ever known and all I've ever loved tries to distance themselves from me as soon as they get that one piece of information. It makes me feel, it just makes me feel like, damn, who do I have in this world? You know what I'm saying?
For real. Like that is like, whenever I hear the term tragic mulatto, I think there's this, even in our family, our grandmother who's passed away, we love my mom. She used to call us light, bright, and damn near white.
And one thing about this, we ain't even that light skin.
but we have a lot of dark skinned people in our family.
Yeah.
And so in comparison, yes, we were light, bright, damn near white.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember very clearly growing up, if I was acting up versus one of my dark skinned cousins, there was a distinction made because I have half of this white person in me, and that's the white in you coming out. And so there was kind of this favoritism that was shown. It wasn't something I my grandmother loved us very much.
She did.
But our biracial identity was always brought up, and it wasn't brought up in a way that made us feel very good, at least me.
No, it's true. And that's one of the main reasons why whenever I go to work or go to school, I never told anybody about my racial identity, because I didn't want to be made fun of. And so most people just assumed that I was Black. I never was called into question.
And so
I am Black.
This is what, and so there's this misconception that I view from people who are fully Black, right? That somehow the mixed person, the biracial person, the mulatto, don't ever call a biracial person a mulatto, by the way. Don't
Please
do it.
don't.
That they are somehow living a better or more privileged life. And I will say that there definitely is privilege that comes with having a lighter skin tone. Absolutely.
I agree
there
with that.
is, right? But the things that are sucky about, the painful aspects of being Black, biracial people are thrown right into that, right? And so biracial people do not have, I can't speak for everybody. I know this biracial person did not have it easy. And and there wasn't a lot of privilege in my setting coming up. Oh, I was gonna say something. Should I bring it up?
What were you gonna say?
We can edit it out if you
Go
don't
ahead.
think it.
I don't know what you're
So
talking about.
there's a family member that we have. I won't say the family member's name, who specifically showed our family favor and wouldn't be around any of our darker relatives. And so this relative only spent time with us. You know who I'm talking about?
No. Oh, really? I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Jared and them weren't coming with us.
That's true.
It was only us.
I thought that's because she lived with us.
Yeah, that too.
Oh.
But I mean, it was never overtly expressed.
Oh.
But
I didn't know that.
But from my my cousins who I've talked to,
they felt that way.
They felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I can absolutely see why they felt that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so that kind of situation kind of puts us in this kind of position where we're seen as more valuable, more what have you, more favorable. And like I said before, when it comes to white folks, they don't see distinctions.
They don't.
I'm the firstborn in my family, you know, and I don't have any kids, but the people who I do see have kids, if they have a firstborn who's a son, there's a lot of pride that comes attached to that. A lot of pride. This is my boy handing out cigars, right? One of the first things my father said about me when I was newly born was how big my lips were. Now, I don't have big lips, right? But it wasn't the fact, look at my son. It was, look how black this boy is.
Yeah.
And he was ashamed to even accompany my mother to leave the hospital. And my mom had to leave the hospital with one of my uncles who's black. And because my dad didn't want that. I remember walking around as a family, and he would never walk with us. He would be either way behind us or way ahead of us. And so I've experienced that, right? And there's one experience that it is extremely painful to this day. You know, we were in Virginia for a family reunion, and my cousins and I were joking and playing, right? And my cousins are black kids from the South, right? And one of my cousins called me a nigga, and I said it back. And my mother turned around her head so fast and looked at me dead in my eye and said, "You are not black enough to say that word." And I do not use that word. I'm not very comfortable with that word. And it kind of was the real genesis of this biracial shame that I have felt pretty much for my entire life.
Yeah.
And so biracial people get it from both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say this too about biracial people is that they are living an experience that neither parent can relate to.
Yep.
And so the biracial child is often has to navigate life on their own.
Yeah. And I was telling Justin yesterday that you know, mom has shared a lot of her experience with me, and my mother grew up with terrible being like horrible colorism was going on when she was growing up. Even her own father, all black, dark-skinned father, um like favored the very, very light um people in his church, and he was the pastor of the church, and really, really favored them up until they were all adults.
Yeah.
And my mom really, really, really had some serious issues with that. So I think that reaction
Absolutely.
was visceral. Like you said, it was a visceral reaction that came
Mhm.
out of like her trauma. And
Yeah.
that's what I think that that is the core of this wanting to separate
Yeah.
us from the black community, is the actual harm that was done to them through the brown paper bag test, through the colorism. But you have to understand that colorism it begins and it ends in our own community.
Mhm.
And and that right there was mom speaking out. And so when we were raised, my mom really, really, really made that a point. So when we were raised as little girls, all of us ended up being attracted to dark. Me, Heather, and Holly were very, very attracted to dark skinned men. Now, we were always raised to know that black is beautiful, to the point where we would stay out in the sun and really, really try to get dark. We were ashamed of our light tone. We tried to get dark all the time. We would compare shades, and the darker, the better you were. That was in our household. But you have to so do you understand like that? Hopefully that makes people understand the absolute nuance there is with each household.
Mhm.
So whereas if you are a mixed person with living with a white mother,
Uh-huh.
chances are you're going to lather in sunblock and try to fit in so you don't. We're trying. Everybody tries to it's a natural human reaction to distance ourselves from pain. So if being dark and your mother commenting on your darkness, if you have a white mom, and constantly throwing jabs at you, you're going to put on sunblock, you're going to stay in the house, you're going to straighten your hair, do all of that stuff. But for us, it was the opposite. So, but guess what? Both of us are mixed. So that's why I feel like ask a mixed person their story. Ask them what they want to identify as.
Mhm.
I feel like if you expect that respect for yourself, you got to give that person a respect in turn.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I appreciate when biracial shows up on an application or some form that I have to fill
I
out,
still feel out black though,
but
because I've been doing it for so long.
typically, it's a term that isn't even included.
No.
Um, and and I want to say, this. I'm going to communicate, because I myself and Heidi talk about the stuff really freely. This is not something that we're doing for the podcast.
Hmm.
This is how we always have talked. We just say how we feel. There is there I think there may be a few, but there's very little elephants in our house
Hmm.
because we call it out.
Yeah.
And not only do we call it out in our house, we call it out in other people's houses. And that's not so welcome. And one of the things I recognize is that um, there's not a lot of people, everybody's not like us in terms of kind of being shameless about like communicating certain things. And so, um, and I know some of the stuff that maybe we talk about hits people hard, the hard way, but I want you to know it's not coming from a place of vitriol or anger or hatred. It's just, uh, you know, it's just keeping it a buck, keeping it, in a buck as it relates to our experience. Um, and so, one of the really unique things about growing up, our unique situation was we lived in a town outside of Pittsburgh called New Kensington. New Kensington was a biracial heaven. There was a study done either in the late 90s or early 80s by USA Today that our little town, New Kensington, Pennsylvania, had the most biracial people per capita than any other city in the country. And so we saw a lot of biracial kids growing up. Our best friends
until we moved to Virginia.
Yeah, until we moved to Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Our best friends from the time that we were infants was another biracial family.
Black mother,
Black mother,
mm-hmm.
and a white father.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still our very dear friends and family today, mm-hmm. the Stankos. What's up, Stankos? And so we have this unique perspective. Our white side of the family, I mean, we were only raised around my mother, and my aunties and my uncles, and that is just our experience. Our white side of the family, by and large, rejected us, gave us the stiff arm. And if they weren't directly giving us the stiff arm, it was very uncomfortable. And they made it really uncomfortable to be
very clear that we didn't belong, and we would have to eat last. Mm-hmm. Make our plates last. If there was a family thing that we went to, everybody had, I mean, it was hell for real. I hated being around them.
Mm-hmm. And kids know when they're being tolerated,
with the exception, as opposed to being celebrated. With the exception, I'll have to mention Aunt Heidi, who I'm named after, was welcomed us with open arms. She's since passed on, but absolutely, she was. But I don't have no living memories of her. Yeah. But mom speaks very, very highly of her.
I remember Aunt Heidi, and I remember, my cousins, Aaron, Angie, Haley. I don't know if I ever told you a little while ago, it was maybe 15 years ago, Aaron just came to visit Misty and I out at Clear Blue.
Wow, yeah.
I hadn't seen her since but it was really
would
cool.
Never expect that from anybody else in our family.
And I will say our grandmother.
Yes.
Our grandmother
was really good friends with my mom's mom.
Yeah, her and my mom's mom were almost like best friends.
They lived together.
And so, but there's 10 siblings in my dad's family. So we have a lot of uncles, a lot of cousins and stuff like that. And so, like, I want to just kind of reinforce again that this is not, our experience is not the typical biracial experience. This is our experience. And this is the only thing we have any expertise on is our lives. Yep. And so if you're listening to this and you're biracial and this hasn't been your experience, I want you to maybe take some time to look at what your experience was and maybe identify for yourselves where there's shame, if there is any shame. And
there probably is.
Yeah.
Because that's the world. That's the way the world sets us up,
Yeah.
To be shamed and have to pick. I mean, if you're a biracial person being dropped in this climate of the United States of America, you're going to I don't think you get away with shame. You can't get away with it because, like, you're pitted against, like, you're taught to either hate one side and love one side and hate the other. And I honestly, I chose my side a long time ago. I didn't even know that I was choosing. I just always thought that I was Black. And it would make me so upset to have people tell me that I'm not. And, but
I think you're pointing up, when you're talking, you're bringing up a real distinction, because that was not my experience.
Yeah.
Due to what Mom said to me that one time. And also my father, as the oldest boy, really took on the responsibility. Heidi barely has any memory of our father growing up. But my dad honed in on me and really tried to shape me and mold me into what he thought I should be. And a big part of it was hating my blackness. Um, this may sound ridiculous and untrue, but this really happened. Um, it was during the LA riots in the early 90s after Rodney King was brutalized by the police. And then there was footage of the riots, and there was a guy named Reginald Denny who was a white dude. They made fun of him on Living Color. It was hilarious. But he was a truck driver. They pulled him out of his truck and they beat the shit out of him. They were throwing bricks at his head and lamps and everything at him. I mean, they beat the shit. It was awful to watch. My dad is watching it and he's getting angry. And my father said, "You know what? 80% of black men are dogs," is what he said.
Wow.
And he said, "Do you agree?" I was like, "No." And if you know my father, there's no room for different opinions.
Nope.
So I was threatened. Eventually, he tried to convince me first by words, and then I still wasn't accepting. And then I just had to say it. Yes, Dad, 80% of black men are dogs, because I was afraid of what would happen to me if I kept denying him. And so even within our family, Heidi has no problem saying the N-word. Neither does Holly, neither does Heather or Jeremy. And they're comfortable with this kind of.
I don't like saying it as a rule. I just, not
No.
I don't have hesitancy because I am a mixed person. I just think I don't want my kids saying it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll look at my home like, nigga, is you crazy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But like, it literally doesn't even sound natural coming out of my mouth. I sound like an old Kentucky white man. I'm saying, "Hey, nigga." And so I don't even say it, right? And even in my family with my siblings, I was told I act white, right? And one of the reasons why is my father refused to have me sound ignorant. And anytime I would say something that didn't make sense or I pronounced something the wrong way, he would lecture me for hours until I was able to speak. And so my dad would not tolerate any type of sounding uneducated speech. Not saying that black speech is uneducated, but he trained me in a specific way to talk in a specific way. And none of my other siblings experienced that. And so so we're talking about a difference of experience within our immediate family, right? So of course our experiences cannot encompass and capture the experiences of all biracial people.
Yeah. And I wanted to also mention this. Somebody had said this on TikTok, I believe it was, and it really, really hit me that biracial people are faced with their blackness more than any other demographic, any other demographic. Because, if you're fully black, you experience racism at, when you're outside of the house, whenever you're outside and, in the world, at school, different places, you experience the racism, but when you come home, that's your safe haven.
Yeah.
You're not black. You are just part of the family. Nobody, but then with biracial people, they can't escape it. We were able to escape it. That's why I say I consider myself very lucky. Luckier than my brother, because he's the oldest and he was raised with our father for years. I don't really have any memories of my father. So living with us. I actually have no living memory of dad. When I started remembering, dad was gone. So but imagine living in a household, being a mixed person, going out in the streets and being treated a certain way, and then coming home and not being able to escape it, having microaggressions from your own parents, your own mothers. Oh, your mother saying that they don't want your hair in braids. like I said, we never had to deal with that, but I know a lot of mixed people that have. The microaggressions about your hair getting nappy, or not wanting to wear ethnic styles, or not standing out in the sun too long because you would look too dark. Imagine that. You can't escape it. That has to be torture, and my heart goes out to people who have had to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not my experience.
Me growing my locks has been a kind of a redemption story. My brother and I are about a year apart in age, and my brother has what is known, often referred to in the Black community as good hair, right? His hair would lay down whenever it was wet, right? He had these loose curls. His hair was soft, and my hair looked like I was born and raised in Cameroon.
Yeah.
And so it was like not even that. People would say, you have nigga hair.
Yeah.
Is what I was told.
Yeah.
And if you look out throughout my history, if you look at my pictures, I always kept my hair very low. Mm-hmm. And that was the reason why. And so I've always had very thick hair. And so about 4 years ago, I decided I was just going to grow it out. And now I have these locks, and I absolutely love my hair now.
Yeah.
And I'm the only person really in our family with my specific hair texture. All my siblings have more kind of typical biracial hair.
I would say that none of us ever had the length though. Like, so none of us were able to grow our hair, so we had a softer texture, definitely not 4C like you, but we were, I don't even know how you classify it, but we weren't 3B and we didn't have the length. We didn't have it at all. So if I would wet my hair, it would turn into a small fro. You know what I'm saying? And we never were able to get that length. And so and people would shame me for that. Girl, you mixing, you got that kind of hair. You know what I'm saying? Like what like what your mama doing to your hair? Nothing. This is literally just the hair I was born with. We used to have to get relaxers all the time. We got relaxers from the moment we were old enough to get a relaxer. But yeah, so it's like you have, if you ain't fit in this mold, then something's wrong with you. If you fit in the mold, then you're not. Then I don't know. It's annoying.
We've talked a lot, and we've kind of aired our grievances and some of the painful aspects about being biracial. I want to ask you this, because as I was thinking about this question, it's not an easy one to answer.
Okay.
But what are some benefits of being biracial, maybe that you have experienced?
One of the main benefits is my light skin privilege. I acknowledge it, and I acknowledge that people don't have it. And I acknowledge that in certain spaces, I am allowed to, Justin, and this is going to be on another episode, but Justin will tell you that I've always been a revolutionary ever since I was a little girl. So I'm very, very big on civil rights. I'm very, very big on, everybody that knows me. I already, like, people are laughing because they know that this is how I am. I've always been very militant in what I believed in. And so I believe that one of my biggest privileges is that I have been allowed to speak in a way that is very bold, and and speak in a way that's very bold in the workplace, at school. I used to lead revolutions at school. Chandrice will tell you this. We heard a white boy call some black boy a nigger, and I staged a whole walkout of the cafeteria, and I don't think I even got suspended for it. If that was a dark-skinned black boy, he would probably have been expelled. You know what I'm saying? So I recognize that as a benefit. I recognize that my voice is allowed in some spaces that people aren't, that just certain people aren't. And I recognize that. And I use that as responsibly as I can.
Yeah, that's good. For me, it's not necessarily a real direct benefit such as privilege, which definitely I've benefited from. But I actually have a very unique perspective that
Mm.
Black people talk about white people, but they don't really know. It's it is conjecture. It is kind of, what they've heard about other people. I know. I was because I was in there, and I,
In the trenches.
yeah, I was in the trenches, and um so I feel really blessed that I have like a um a unique perspective, um and it really serves me well now as a therapist. My unique and varied experiences helps me to be able to help a lot of other people. And one of the things that makes me so happy, since I started out my private practice, is I've had a lot of biracial clients come to me and are looking to kind of navigate and wrestle with this biracial
Mm.
identity. And it's I feel so blessed. It feels like such an honor to be able to help other biracial people. So for me, that has been uh, the benefit, as far as like being biracial. Um, so I'm thinking we're gonna close. Uh, Anything you want to say as we wrap it up?
I think the main point that I really, really want to get across is understand it's just understanding the nuance of everybody's situation
Mhm,
and really trying to listen and not tell people what they must do, tell people how they must identify, tell people how they must feel. And it's not a joke, it's not funny, it's not something to laugh at or to poke fun at somebody having being in an identity crisis. I
mhm,
see that a lot, and I think it's disgusting. I think it's unfortunate that Black people who know how it
mhm,
is to be to be oppressed, back, that to know how it is to not have our voice heard,
mhm,
to laugh at people who have an identity
mhm,
crisis, or you know what I'm saying. So be kind, because you will want literally somebody to be kind to you. It's really
mhm,
not that hard. For some people it might be a little bit harder. And really, and if a mixed person is telling you about their experience, if that evokes an emotion in you, it could be a happy emotion, it could be a negative emotion, it could be something that you want to just tell them what it could be something that's nagging at you. Whenever a mixed person calls herself Black, or a mixed person that calls herself white, i I invite you to evaluate that emotion, and I guarantee that you could trace it back to something somewhere in your childhood. Go to that place and heal from that place, because the last thing we need to do is divide ourselves.
mhm,
We are like we're dividing ourselves, and for what? We need
mhm,
these numbers. Y'all
mhm,
need us biracial people with y'all. What are we doing? We're
mhm,
together in this. We are people of color. Stop. Stop. Just stop. Evaluate that emotion, get it healed, and then let's do this revolution together, because we can't do it without each other.
mhm. That's good. I really do. I've heard, and I think there's a lot of validity of in Black people's emotions about biracial people. There's some very famous people who, actresses, actors, and stuff like that, biracial, who really kind of, uh, I think it was Zoe Zeldana is one of them,
Yeah.
um, like who just like tries to distance herself from Black, and I think I think I want to acknowledge it hasn't been with me, but I feel like a lot of Black people feel betrayed by
Yeah.
biracial
And that's
people.
hard, and it's harmful.
It's
That
harmful. It
hurts.
hurts.
And
It's
I acknowledge
harmful.
that.
And so
Yeah.
I don't think these the feelings that Black people feel about biracial people, some Black people feel about biracial people, are invalid.
They're all valid.
Their their feelings are valid.
Yep.
But
I agree.
if I could say anything, biracial people don't have it as easy as you think. They
Yeah.
really don't. And they face unique challenges that Black people don't face. That was a really good point about being safe at home. We were getting called zebra at school, and we got called zebra at home. Panda, you know what I'm saying? We were getting all that, you know. And so I hope you guys were able to draw something from this discussion. I want to say, Heidi, this is like the most fun I've had with my sibling in a long, long time. And so
I'm having fun with
this
you
is
too.
really fun. If you guys aren't aware, I'm having a surgical procedure done on June 12th. And I'm going to be recovering for a couple of weeks. And my beautiful sister drove across the country from Maryland to Seattle to help take care of her big brother. And I feel really honored. And, you know, I was telling Heidi that whenever I'm not around my family, the crazy talkishes, I feel like, remember the round, normal SpongeBob? That's how I feel. And whenever I'm around Heidi or any of my siblings, it's like, okay, I could be weird again. I could be a talkish. And so this has been really fun. And I hope you guys are having fun as well. Feel free to leave a comment.
Yes, reach out, please. We would love to hear from you.
Follow, spread the word, because I think we're really off to something that is gonna take off.
I agree.
Peace. Assalamu alaikum.